Tony Kinnett.
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 Host of the Tony Kinnett Cast.
Let's get down to business.
You're listening to the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
Here on the Daily Signal.
Well, a lot of things are fast and furious this evening. News flying in from around the world. Of course, there are a lot of people in many of our listening markets on our syndication partners who are without power, who are dealing with hurricane, now tropical storm Helene. And I know there are a lot of details that we're still learning about, which specifically the damage extent are causing kind of the most trouble in certain regions of the country. So first and foremost, stay safe. That also said, the political side of the United States kind of culture and society at the moment is not exactly what I expected it to be a month ago. I expected that as we got closer to the election, it would be perhaps the Donald Trump campaign, which would become more and more kind of erratic, kind of throwing out anything that they could, maybe saying something ill-advised as tensions ran a little bit high, and that the Kamala Harris campaign would go into deep cryo-freeze, shut out the world basement strategy campaign. Because we kind of learned our lesson, right? Which is that Trump needed to get out there and really glue Joe Biden to Kamala Harris. And then Kamala Harris needed to avoid that and basically speak as little as possible. Instead, the exact opposite has happened, and I am bewildered. Now, the reason the exact opposite happening is not only bewildering, but a very, very, very bad thing for Democrats. And we're going to talk about this a little bit later, but media outlets are losing their minds. A lot of down-the-ballot Democratic campaigns are also really upset by what basically is a perfect storm, or in this case, a filled-out bingo card against Kamala Harris in this particular election. So when I say a filled-out bingo card, for the last couple of years, we've had presidential debates. We've had, some kind of event that we're watching politically, and it's coming on TV in a couple of hours, and we'll pull out this bingo card. And it's all of these things that might, cause us to take a drink during some kind of a thing that we expect to happen during the debate, during the election, whatever it is. Things that we expect because society, politics, culture has become such a predictable game at this point. And in the case of the Kamala Harris campaign, there are a series of things that can happen in an incumbency election where someone from the previous administration is running for the presidency. There are a certain number of things that can go very poorly. So right before you get right up against the election, now we're just 38 days away, anything can go wrong. And any of those things that go wrong in this theoretical bingo card could cost you the election, or if you line up enough of them in a row, it could cost you the election. This could be as simple as saying something really stupid. This could be as simple as the economy not doing as well as you would like it to, or perhaps some kind of foreign conflict or problem down at the border. Kamala Harris has not only managed to get kind of policy bad luck bingo through one row, she has somehow managed to simultaneously fill out the entire card, all 25 spaces, of really bad, dumb, awful things to happen that kind of work against you during an election campaign. And it's costing her in a number of ways. First of all, according to a new Gallup poll, for the first time in decades, really since the first time Republicans had tied Democrats in 2004, realistically a lot longer back from before 1992. For the first time in 2024, since before 92, more Americans identify as Republicans than identify as Democrats. According to this Gallup poll, 48% of Americans identify with the GOP, 45% identify with Democrats, and based on some regression analysis, this is according to Quantus Insights, using Gallup's party ID and historical election results, they are declaring for the first time in ages and ages, like since the Reagan-Mondale election of 84, that Republicans have basically a 3% advantage and a 2.5% majority popular vote margin, which Republicans haven't won the national popular vote in some time. If you actually apply the Gallup poll that came out today with some of the other election data and modeling, if the election were to occur today along these lines, Republicans would win 312 electoral votes, with Democrats not even getting to 200. Toss-up states being Minnesota, Virginia, and New Mexico, and then New Hampshire. Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Arizona, and Georgia, North Carolina in this model aren't even considered toss-ups. Now, I don't necessarily, put any faith in that. In my opinion, it's a toss-up election. And so, therefore, the kind of extenuating factors, the things that are going on around the two campaigns, are going to play a very, very significant role in determining who wins a lot of these toss-up states and ends up pulling out the electoral victory. And again, to my complete bewilderment, every single thing the Harris campaign has tried has backfired. Every last one of them. I honestly cannot think of a single thing that the Biden-Harris, now the Harris-Walz campaign has done that has not filled out a bingo card of suck for this particular campaign. We're going to go through them real quick here. First of all, the entire foreign policy situation is a nightmare and a half for the present administration. In the last month, Israel has, at this point, single-handedly taken out Hezbollah. They took out through a series of cell phone pinpointing back in February, and then in the last month, through pagers and explosive walkie-talkies, and then a series of airstrikes, Israel has retaliated against a series of rocket strikes by Hezbollah, illegally occupying southern Lebanon. Israel has now launched a full offensive into southern Lebanon with their air force, and has eradicated the entire leadership and most likely also the senior leader of Hezbollah, the Iranian proxy terror group. As well, Israel has continued pressing their attack against Hamas in the Gaza Strip. Yahya Sinwar, the leader of Hamas, is nowhere to be found. And Ukraine, Zelensky, though he was here in kind of a desperate attempt by the Harris and Biden administration to make Zelensky appear on their side, there's really some rocky stuff going on between the United States and Ukraine at the moment because Biden spent so much of his administration slow-walking aid to Ukraine in fear that Zelensky was going to throw long-range rockets into Russia, that Zelensky is now, like Israel, just started ignoring the United States and just started doing what he thinks is necessary to win the war. So Ukraine is pushed into Russia. Israel is taking down Hezbollah. Secretary Lloyd Austin was speaking to reporters about 3 hours ago and basically pointed out the U.S. had nothing to do with Israeli strikes, did not get a heads up. He's clearly extremely aggravated because the U.S. is embarrassed. The Biden administration has completely sacrificed Americans' foreign policy influence on the global stage. Crime is a serious issue for Kamala Harris. The only way that she can somehow run on being tough on crime is lying about her entire career back in California when she would cancel entire swaths of investigations because her own staff was taking the drugs in the evidence room. And now the crime situation in the United States is so terrible that the only way the FBI can somehow get the numbers to go down is by not counting certain cities, which are the most violent in this country, in their annual statistics. And not just violent crime in inner cities that we all know and love, on campuses, due to Kamala Harris and Joe Biden's soft hand on, for example, the Black Lives Matter, the Antifa, and the pro-Hamas riots on university campuses. Now these are flaring up again and throwing entire areas of the country into crime-ridden chaos. Then there's the economy. Normally, the incumbent administration is supposed to have kind of an easy time riding into the election because the Fed lowers the interest rate a little bit. The government releases some strategic petroleum from our reserves, and the gas prices go down, the market gets a little bit better, and that's enough to persuade some voters. The interest rates being dropped 0.5 point have been a failure. They have not improved the market. They've made the stock market go up just a little bit, but unemployment is still on the rise, not on the rise as a whole, but on the rise for American-born workers. Those who were born outside of the country, illegal immigrants as well as legal immigrants, their employment numbers have gone up, but part-time employment is the only kind of work that has really increased during this administration for native-born Americans. So inflation is, again, I don't even need to tell you that inflation is still rampant. You feel it at the grocery store, you feel it at the gas pump, you feel it at every other business. And then we get to the border. So Kamala Harris is struggling. She's extremely unpopular. She's got scandals. The party's fracturing. So she decides that what she needs to do to save Arizona for her campaign, because some polls show Trump basically running away, even if Arizona's gubernatorial election goes blue, Trump still ends up pulling ahead and pretty well away with Arizona. She goes to the border in Arizona, and then, again, massive problem for her campaign, which we are going to get to in just a little bit. Don't go anywhere. Stick around. This is the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal and first on 93 WIBC.
Kendall and Casey. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIPC.
Closing time.
So, with Kamala Harris down when it comes to voters' opinion of the Biden-Harris, let's say rhetoric, or we could say policy, but they really haven't had any substantive policy on the southern border crisis, it's just really wrecking her in the Sunbelt states. And of course, we've already talked about the economy, but if you're going to fill out the bingo board, you have to talk about the biggest bungle I've seen a campaign make in ages. Finally, Kamala Harris went down to the border. The last time she was at the border, she took a 30-second video of her walking along the Trump border wall that she used for an ad, the same border wall that she originally called barbaric and stupid. And that was pretty much it. Now she is back at the border. And did she do any kind of a press conference or give any kind of a public speech? Absolutely not. Absolutely. Can you imagine the crowd? Democrats in Arizona and New Mexico blame the Harris-Biden administration for the border, according to the polling data. And now she's down there to do a little campaign ad business. And even CNN recognizes that this is a move of desperation at this point. So, again, from CNN, the chyron they had today when they showed Harris getting off of the plane walking with Senator Mark Kelly, they said Harris visits Arizona border looking to close gap with Trump. That's not very neck-and-neck language, is it? MSNBC decided to interview some of the people down by the border, and, well, things didn't go too well. Here was MSNBC getting an earful from voters.
We're going to have 2 million people cross this border for the first time ever. You're confident this border's secure?
She's trying to make the case that, you know, she has been tough on the border as a prosecutor in California. What do you make of that? What do you make of that?
It's lies.
What do you make of Democrats trying to argue that they are tough on the border?
It's political rhetoric that's an absolute lie.
I mean, that's certainly a struggle. And again, by the way, just to point out that Harris likes to go on the record talking about how Donald Trump apparently told all of the congressional Republicans to vote against this amazing bill that would have fixed the border just like that. Now, we've gone over that particular border bill piece by piece. Did the bill shut the border? No. It gave the president the power to shut the border, which he already has, after a certain number of days in a row in which numbers were over a certain arbitrary threshold. And the president of the United States could not keep the border closed for more than a set number of days. And the president of the United States basically had to go through all of these hoops to apply emergency status down at the border. That was half of the bill. The other half of the bill increased the amount of funding for hiring new Border Patrol agents to patrol and shut the border. No, as explicitly stated in the bill, it provided funding for more ferrying services for the U.S. Border Patrol along the southern border. Now, she likes to talk about how that would have fixed everything. No, that would not have fixed anything at all. And by the way, Democrat senators and representatives have actually pointed this out, that no, just making the Border Patrol ferry more illegal immigrants across the border and then to transportation hubs isn't fixing it. But pretending that Donald Trump is like secretly in the back pulling the string, no, I'm afraid not. And if you're going to complain about Trump, I will remind each and every one of you that over 40 of Trump's executive orders on the southern border were rescinded by Joe Biden and Kamala Harris on day one in 2021. And in 2022, Kamala was on the record telling everyone who would listen the border was secure. Everything was fine.
We're going to have 2 million people cross this border for the first time ever. You're confident this border's secure?
We have a secure border in that is a priority for any nation, including ours and our administration. But there are still a lot of problems that we are trying to fix, given the deterioration that happened over the last 4 years. We also have to put in place a law and a plan for a pathway for citizenship.
So what was the priority? It was actually about increasing immigration, not actually about stopping illegal immigration. And then all of a sudden it was a crisis, and all of that rhetoric went out the window. All of a sudden no one had any idea. Oh, wow, who did this? Fantastic, amazing stuff. So Kamala goes down to the border today, and then actions have consequences. A letter from Immigration Customs Enforcement was sent to Representative Tony Gonzalez of Texas. This was later confirmed by the director of ICE today, that over 13,000 convicted murderers crossed the southern border and were released into the interior of this country anyway by the Biden-Harris administration. Do you know where they are? None of us know where they are. They're just gone. They're in the interior somewhere. Now, I was told by Democrats that this wasn't a thing, but ICE has confirmed it. 25,272 illegal immigrants over the last couple of years, convicted for rape and sexual assault, allowed through by ICE. A total of 425,431 convicted criminals have been allowed to cross the southern border and been released. These aren't people that got by Border Patrol. These are just the ones that we know. These were caught by Border Patrol, claimed asylum, and then, according to the Biden administration's explicit policies through border czar Kamala Harris, were then released into the country, most of them never to be seen again, to this day. 222,141 of these illegals, by the way, in addition to the convicted criminals, 222,000 of these have pending criminal charges. So, womp womp. Looks like the whole border success story, I'm afraid, no. She cannot run as an agent of change when she is simultaneously the vice president who Biden gets on national television and brags is responsible for everything. Doesn't quite work like that, no matter how much she absolutely, desperately wants that to be true. Her party is plagued with scandals. Nancy Pelosi's husband is now getting additional scrutiny because he sold off a bunch of stock right before the United States government basically started a serious investigation into that company. Nancy Pelosi's incredibly corrupt. New York City, Eric Adams, corruption scandal. Of course, Senator Bob Menendez from New Jersey, corruption scandal. Fractured party, progressives fighting with the corporatists. She's deeply unpopular. She can't speak coherently. She switches up her accent regardless of the crowd that she's in front of. She has weird, pointless phrases and talking points that she keeps coming to because she can't answer any questions. People ask simple things like, what are you going to do? And she says, well, I'm from a middle-class family. And nothing else comes out of that entire answer. She's lied countless times about everything from like plagiarizing Martin Luther King Jr. and saying that she wanted freedom as a child, to saying that she worked at McDonald's. All you have to do when you pick a vice presidential candidate is pick somebody who's not going to do any harm. She couldn't do that. Walz is terrible. Tim Walz is a very unpopular vice presidential pick. She's got a ton of flip-flops on policy without explanation. The media can't even carry water for it. New York Times went after her over that today. And worst of all, she is a president without an actual, or a vice president without a vision for her administration. It's all platitudes. However, I do have some optimism for you, because while she may see Pennsylvania as a block of electoral votes, thank God there's just a little bit more to the Keystone State. We're going to talk to Gabriella Hoffman from IWF about that up next. Don't go anywhere. This is the Tony Kinnett Cast on The Daily Signal, first on 93 WIBC.
Do you ever worry?
It's the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
It is a great day whenever we can be joined on the show by Gabby Hoffman from over at the Independent Women's Forum, because there are so few individuals who understand the importance of really good energy policy. Really good energy policy drives everything else, period. Drives the United States military because we run on our stomachs and how fast things get to troops. It fuels our entire economy and transportation system. It is in charge of making sure that the United States flows as smoothly as a well-oiled machine. Can't have a well-oiled machine unless it's plugged in. Gabby, thanks for joining us this fine, rainy evening.
It's great to catch up with you after a little time away. Thanks for having me, Tony.
Yeah, we like having you on a little bit more often than the recent hiatus, but a lot of our kind of returning segments, Stephen Kent is running for a council out in Virginia. We've got Rebecca Downs from townhall.com. She's been busier than a bee in a bonnet nest, let me tell you. So let's dig right into something that matters more than anything else in energy policy. Tell me about the long march of nuclear energy right now. Any big updates you can give us?
Oh, there are plenty, but I'm going to condense it as simply as possible for you and your listeners, Tony. But America pioneered nuclear energy. I think that's what people get lost in the conversation. But in recent decades, we ceded that power to other countries, especially our adversaries, because of just misinformation or miscommunication about what nuclear does and how it's powered. And I don't think it helped when people were obviously responding to the Chernobyl incident or even 3 Mile Island. Although 3 Mile Island was actually not as deadly as a lot of people recall it to be. There wasn't a single death following that. And we'll talk about 3 Mile Island's latest development shortly.
Right.
But American nuclear is getting a renaissance, a second look, because of several things. There's a growing demand of electricity in this country, and in order to fulfill those needs, you need to have reliable baseload power, or power that can sustain.
You have big boy problems, you need big boy solutions.
Yes. So the two sources of energy that are really standing out are natural gas, which is a very cheap and affordable and clean fossil fuel source, and also nuclear. Nuclear is also being factored into the equation more, especially by a lot of tech companies, to power AI-powered data centers. So I don't want nuclear to simply just be a play tool of billionaires and simply the play tool of Microsoft and others. It should be also used for powering different industries beyond AI and beyond data power centers. So I don't want it to be hampered by that, but I am excited by the prospect of 3 Mile Island coming back online. I think it's important that the private sector take leadership on this and not relinquish to the federal government, because we've seen when the federal government has really latched onto unreliable intermittent sources like solar and wind, it dooms them. And then there's no market demand for them as a result of too much interference, and even subsidies aren't enticing.
So it's interesting. You talk a little bit about the private market taking control of nuclear energy. There's so many things in that excellent condensing that I want to dig into, so we'll try to take it piece by piece as quickly as possible. First of all, it should be noted that both the United States Navy's nuclear program, for example, in powering its nuclear submarines, for instance, and nuclear-powered aircraft carriers, the only ones in the world except for the one that France has, just a little bit of bragging rights there. But our nuclear-powered fleet really became more efficient because of innovation in the private sector, whereas NASA, messing around with nuclear because it stayed so heavily involved state only, lagged behind the Navy by like 25, 30 years in nuclear power development. Now, that's just a fun note because I'm a former science teacher and a big nerd. What I think is very interesting about 3 Mile Island reopening, Gabby, you might be able to help us out with a little geography lesson here. If you had to take a wild guess, based on media coverage, what would you say is the state that has received the most coverage in this particular election cycle, if you were to just look at the last 50 articles in the media?
That would be the Keystone State, Pennsylvania, where 3 Mile Island is located in, yes.
So you're jumping right ahead of me. So that would be the state that Pennsylvania, that would be the island that Pennsylvania owns. Now, let's jump one further. You mentioned natural gas production. Natural gas most often comes from types of mining and fracking that's also commonly found in what particular state or commonwealth in this country?
That would be the Keystone State in the Marcellus Shale in northwestern Pennsylvania, a place I've been to before and had a great time in.
So it appears as though, we always talk about Rust Belt energy manufacturing policy, right? And we focus on Pennsylvania a lot, and people like to make the point that, well, Pennsylvania is important because it's a swing state. I very much disagree. One of the reasons that Pennsylvania is such an important state in discussing Rust Belt regional policy or Great Lakes regional policy, whatever you want to call it, is its crucial role in developing clean, reliable, and abundant energy for the entire United States, like you said, way beyond just AI.
It absolutely is. And I think what people undervalue about Pennsylvania, beyond its, I guess, importance in politics, it's an energy producing state. It's the top energy producer on the East Coast. It supplies a lot of natural gas, coal, oil, and even after Illinois, it's the second largest generator of nuclear energy in the country. People don't know that. And so it's a power player economically, environmentally, energy-wise. And I think that's more important than, how it votes in elections. I think because it has so many natural resources that can be safely harnessed and developed and procured, that's what I think is more important to take away from Pennsylvania's importance. And people don't. They just say, well, it's important here, but it really has so many different reserves, proven oil and gas reserves that could help power the country, and not only our country, but even the world too, help supply, natural gas needs to countries, our friends who want to wean themselves off of Russia and China. And so we play an important role, especially in terms of the energy abundance or energy dominance question. And if we're not producing more and leaving things in perpetuity in the ground, we're ceding that power to our adversaries. And Pennsylvania can help fill the need of that gap.
I just think that for the rest of the country, we are repeated now on a station in Western Pennsylvania. And of course, it's nice for people to hear a little bit of love towards their home state or Commonwealth in this instance. But I think that it really is something that's kind of been a failure of American education. That if I was to ask you why the Sun Belt is the Sun Belt, you would talk about, solar energy production. You might actually point to some of the hydroelectric power that comes out of Tennessee and out of other major rivers and reservoir places around the country. We know some of the natural resource pockets. People might even know that, again, in the northwestern United States, that's where we get a lot of uranium. However, if you were to ask the average American which were the two biggest powerhouses, again, no play on words intended, for nuclear energy production, I don't think the average American could tell you that Illinois and Pennsylvania are the key. The average American understands fracking is a big part of Pennsylvania, but it's like talking about the ability to walk. When we talk about Pennsylvania and being a swing state electorally, we talk about Pennsylvania as though, Pennsylvania looks really nice how it walks, instead of the importance of Pennsylvania being, Pennsylvania is like one of the legs that helps us move at all. Its importance to the country is far more than electoral votes. One of the reasons the Pennsylvania steel industry was so incredibly driven, again, no pun intended, was because of the energy production that has been known since all the way back into the coal and early oil refinery days. And again, a really strong, sensible energy policy is not just for localized production. But again, here we go. Another foreign policy now being another category of policy that stands on energy policy. Help us out a little bit more. What's the future for expansion, just in your own reading, for how we can market internationally the security of the U.S. global trade economy with natural gas and nuclear? Like, what does that look like? Maybe put a little bit into practice.
Well, it's in the form of obviously creating more incentives in the market, not creating a regulatory environment that makes it impossible for domestic production to occur onshore and offshore. It's to cut red tape, to really unleash energy infrastructure projects through enacting serious permitting reform, not kind of this fake bipartisan permitting rule that the Biden-Harris administration put, which would prolong the approval process, which is already long-standing. It's on average 7 to 10 years to get a project approved and online, with this nonsensical criteria to say you need to follow indigenous knowledge or environmental justice when weighing the approval or denial of a project. That makes no sense. It hurts our energy security and makes us look weak on the world stage when China and Russia are expediting and improving far more projects than we are in a less sustainable fashion than we could be doing.
That's
and so
a great...
when we're focused on this like nitty-gritty nonsensical criteria which has no bearing on energy security, it really undermines us.
That's a facet of foreign policy that I hadn't really considered, that we're allowing a lot of major infrastructure and construction projects around the world, from canals to massive dams to again, improvements along the coasts, not just in like tsunami protection, but in huge civil infrastructure projects. That's got to be fueled by a huge source of energy, and it's either going to be fueled by Russian and Chinese oil, or it's going to be fueled by the either resources freed up to be exported by nuclear energy production here in the country, or by massive tankers full of natural gas that are being transported. Gabby, I hate to say that we're a little bit short on time, but God knows that with us getting back to some regular stuff, we can start a little of this optimism on the future of American energy policy and production. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Good to revisit with you.
Gabriella Hoffman from the Independent Women's Forum. Excellent stuff coming out of there. If you guys aren't checking them out, you should follow the link in the description. We'll be back in just a second. Don't go anywhere. This is the Tony Kinnett Cast on the Daily Signal, now nationally syndicated, but still first out of 93 WIBC.
Mail time.
Mail time. Mail time.
On the Tony Kinnett Cast.
Hey, welcome back. It's good to be with you this fine, rainy evening. Got a couple of mail time questions for you. A nice little bit of good family fun right before we get to the weekend. So, to dig into a few questions that you have sent in from Eric, do you think that Gen Z voter turnout is going to increase because of celebrity endorsements? The long answer to this is absolutely not. The short answer to this is no. In all seriousness, whether it's Elon Musk on the right, whether it's Taylor Swift on the left, it's really not ever been any kind of an impact in the information era that we've seen. That just because someone comes out there and says, "Hi, you like me, you need to go out and vote." Having someone be somebody that you admire tell you that you need to go and do something, if it's something that you already enjoy doing, that's a good way to encourage individuals. But if it's something that's annoying, which, as I've said, before a couple of times, voting is a lot like going to the DMV. I'm sorry, it's just not realistically going to happen. Also, younger generations just don't tend to vote. Gen Z is so far looking like they're probably not actually going to come out and vote. I could be wrong, but I doubt it. Number 2 from Steven. Tony, why do we continue to allow the press and politicians to call abortions reproductive health care? Their objective is not to produce children, so therefore we should be calling it something else. The short answer is people don't actually pay close enough attention to what things are called, and it's a lot easier to just let someone call something else something until it becomes normal than to really make a bit of a fuss and say, no, actually, this is something else entirely. The culture as a whole, outside of the political class, has not realistically cared a whole lot about abortion for the last 30 years. And because of that, the terminology was going to go to whoever owned the most media real estate, which would be those on the left. This one's from Catalina. What's the number one thing keeping you from moving to Florida or Texas? The tap water. Every time I go down to Florida for some kind of a conference or a speaking engagement or something, I turn on the cold water and I get lukewarm water. It's horrible. I go down to Texas. It's lukewarm, muggy, nasty water. In Indiana, God bless this place, we have the Ohio River Basin, and the water is frigid as it comes out of the ground, as all cold water should be from the tap. And I kid you not, it's one of the greatest. It's what I missed the most when I was in college. It's what I missed the most when I travel, of just, the nonsensical, average, everyday things that you kind of miss around the house. Indiana well water does a huge part of keeping me here. And if you're judging me for that, it's probably because you've never had really good tap or well water before. This one's from Brendan. Is there a particular conspiracy theory that you know is dumb, but you believe it anyway? Yes. It's that Mattress Firm and other mattress stores, there is no way they make enough money to stay in business, much less stay open all the time with no cars in the parking lot ever, and them not be money laundering. I 100% firmly believe that there must be mattress stores out there which are doing money laundering. There's just no feasible way that I could see them staying open otherwise. Do I have any solid evidence of that? No. But it's a stupid conspiracy theory, and I believe it. Dang it. This is from Lexi. It follows right on the heels of the other one. She said that her brother asked the other question, so she said, I'll flip it this way. What conspiracy theory do you hold the most animosity towards? In other words, I can't believe people are stupid enough to believe this. Chemtrails. The people who believe that chemtrails and manipulated weather are like an act of the federal government. We cannot keep a secret at the federal government level for more than 15 minutes before whistleblowers come out and talk about it on either side of the aisle. First of all, as someone over a 5th grade education, the lines that you see in the sky are not chemtrails. When air goes through a jet engine, it heats up and gets moist. You know how water also drips out of your muffler or off of certain parts of your car due to condensation? Well, that happens way up in the air. Only it's so cold and the pressure is so low up in the air that water droplet expands into a bit of cloud. And, kind of crazy, if the jet moves in a direction, then the cloud is suspended behind the jet. This happens everywhere all the time. It's not chemtrails. No. Stop it. The government is seeding chemicals in the sky. No, believe me, if we could actually control and manipulate the weather, like if we actually had the ability to do that on a large scale, rain seeding only works like 1 time out of 5. It's extremely expensive, and it doesn't even produce large amounts of rain. People that are running around right now saying that Hurricane Helene is like suspicious, and therefore it's very likely that it's actually the government that's trying to manipulate hurricanes or set Hawaii on fire. No, stop it. There are enough bad things that individuals in the government are involved with without making up brand new things that there are no evidence for at all. And I'm sorry, I saw it on Facebook. Doesn't count. It doesn't. That one bothers me. Probably because as a former science teacher, actually understanding how those things work from a basic engineering perspective, that's probably the biggest thing. I don't know. Maybe if I knew more about running mattress stores, I probably wouldn't believe in the mattress firm conspiracy. So I don't know. That's one of those things. That'll about do it for this particular week of coverage. We'll be back next week, and not to mention our VP debate coverage on Tuesday. This is the Tony Kinnett Cast on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated and first on 93 WIBC. Take care.